licensing, subscription, or percentage of the revenue. And in exchange from this subscription, licensing, etc., you're gonna receive a development tool, and you're gonna receive training. So you can see Unity and Unreal creating a lot of events that helps you and trains you to develop your games. Okay, that's the first relation into our industry. But then you develop your game, you finish your game, and you want to launch it into the market. Okay, so during the development of your game, you have two paths to launch your game. The classic one is you need a publisher. So back then, remember, you need to sell your games through discs or cartridges physically for your consumers. It was impossible for you as a developer to print your own CDs and sell around in the retail, you know? You need an intermediary that helps you to create these possibilities for you, this environment for you. Okay? So back then, the publishers are absolutely necessary to create this connection with distributors, with the retailers, to print, to ship your cartridges, to print your CDs, and so on. But now, we doesn't need that. But the role that the publishers have right now as a stakeholder in the industry are mostly the marketing and PR. So what's the main value of a publisher? The main value of a publisher is that they are experienced enough in the industry to understand how to make your game go to your player, to player know that your game exists. So the intelligence of a publisher are pretty huge and bigger than a developer mostly, because they launched a lot of games since the beginning of their history as a publisher, and they know a lot about what the users want, what the players want, and where the players are. So the publisher can help you to make you reach this player, to create strategies to reach this player. But not only that, mostly in our industry, the publishers are the main financiers of game production. So you are the game developer, you have your prototype, and you want to produce your games. Games cost to be made. Even if you are not paying for the people, these people working for free are expending their times, are investing their times to produce their games. So they are paying with their times, and times costs. So in the end of the day, you need money, or you need people willing to work for free to develop a game. And the most used source to financing these products is financing from these publishers. So these publishers finance the developers, market their games, and the developers give back for the publishers the licensing for distributing these games. Then the publisher, with this license, after finance the development of the game, marketing this game, these publishers distribute into a digital platform like Steam, like a console platform like Xbox, PlayStation, whatever. Put the game executable inside this store. This store, the distributor store, provides a platform for community management, for the publishers to administrate, to create their marketing, PR strategies, and so on. And this distributor gives to the publisher the revenue of the games being sold minus the distribution fees. So if your game are $10 in a store, mostly, and we're gonna see in the next slides this more in details, but mostly they take a part of your income and give another part for the publisher. So the publisher will get this part and gonna give you back the rate of percentage of the sales revenue that is part from the developer. And we're gonna see in details in the next slides. Okay? So remember, you are the developer, you create your game, you license your game, you receive the financing, receive your marketing, the publisher publish your game into the distributor store, and the distributor store receive the retail price from the players and give to the players the game, the community, the curatorship, and also receive consumer behavior data. And that's what makes Steam, Google Play, App Store, etc. so powerful. They know how players behave. They have all the consumption behavior data, and the players are inside their store. So it's really hard to sell a game directly to developers, to players without these stores. If you need to sell your game without Steam, without Google Play, without any of these stores, it's really hard. So you need them because they have the players, they have the community, they have the data about the consumers. But today, you doesn't need to make this way to develop your game, to launch your game. You can directly publish your game into the store like Steam. So, as I say, back then you need a publisher, but right now you can self-publish your game. You can put your game directly on Android, and App Store, in Steam, whatever. In this case, you doesn't gonna receive the financing. You're gonna self-finance your product. You're gonna need to make your own marketing and PR of your game, but you're gonna receive all the revenue from your game. Differently, that you're gonna have intermediate stakeholder. They're gonna get a share from the profit of your game. You're gonna have 100% of the revenue from the distributors, minus the revenues, distribution fees that you pay for that. So that's the main structure of our industry. So summarizing, you need a middleware to develop your game. You develop your game. You can directly distribute in the store, or you can get a publisher for do it for you. And then the distributor will connect with the players, and the players gonna pay for the games. That's the overall way that games are being sold around the industry. But we have pretty different cases when you're talking about free-to-play games. Differently than you selling the game executable, and we're gonna see the business model around it closely. You're gonna sell not the game itself, but you're gonna start to sell subscription, microtransactions, DLCs, etc., etc., etc. But the main process are that on the screen. Okay, so let's understand the evolution of this value chain and where is the profit from each one of the stakeholders of the industry. Let's start with the old days. So when I'm talking back then, cartridges, discs, the games being sold physically for the people, that's the usual share of the price of a game that stays with each one of these stakeholders. So let's think that a game costs $10 again. So from this $10, $2 stands with the retail, the store, the final store that you bought your game. $5 with a distributor. So this distributor that makes your game come to the stores. $15 goes to the platform. So for licensing the game to be in your console, you need to pay a licensing fee from each sale of your game. Usually 15% at least goes to the platform. 14% goes to the publisher. So the company that finances the production of the game and makes the marketing and connect with the platform and distributor and so on gets $4 from this game. And $2 from this game stand with the developer. So back then, from $10, $2 stand with you as a developer. But then we have the digital distribution. So you doesn't need anymore the retail and the distributor. You can sell directly for your players into stores. So you started to, as a developer, you need a publisher to go to the platform. The same structure that I said before. What is the 10 to 80% range here? Depending on how much of your game the publisher invested on to being produced, the more money that publishers invest in your game production, more revenue share the publisher gets. Commonly, these range to 10 to 80% from each one. So if your game are almost ready or are fully developed without any financing from the publisher gonna get 20% of the revenue share just for making the market of the game. 30%, whatever. But if you need to cover all the costs of production, all the costs of the production, you're gonna get 10-20% for you because they're gonna pay for all the development and they need to recoup this investment. So generally 70% of the revenue are being distributed between developer and publisher, and the platform Steam gets 30%, or Google Play or App Store, the Epic Game Store get 11%. They get less from the revenue share, but mostly the platforms, they get 30% of the revenue share. So if you are selling your game $10 in Steam, Steam gonna get $3, and you're gonna split with your publisher the $7. But if you are self-publishing your game, you're gonna get all the 7% for you, and the platform gonna get the 30%. Okay, so I explained a little bit about the structure of our industry. Okay, so now let's understand the business models. So the monetization, how we pay for our games. Basically, we have these 5 models of monetization. So how do we earn money from our games? The first one, the oldest one, is pay to play, the premium, the unit sale. Physically or downloadable, you are paying for this closed experience. You download the game, to download your game, or to put your CD inside your console, you need to pay for that unit. That's the classic premium pay-to-play model. But we have also the freemium model. The freemium model, it's in fact something that was really, really famous back then. I don't know if any place was that here in Brazil, but I know that in other countries we had the same thing. We had these magazines that comes with CDs attached with demo versions of the games. These demo versions of the games are a shareware model. When you buy a demo CD with a lot of demonstration of games, and you can pay for the developer for a full version of this game. The freemium today is pretty close to this demo and full game model. So you are paying for you are playing a free game. You started with a free game, but if you want the full experience of this game, if you want more stages, premium, whatever, you need to pay for it. So it's free until a certain stage of this experience of this game, and you need to pay for the full experience of the game. Some of these games are organized around DLCs, so the base game are free, and you are paying DLCs, downloadable content, to make the experience complete. But we have also premium games that are selling DLCs, so you are earning in the base game and in DLCs. But mostly the freemium business model is you are distributing your game for free, but not the full experience. The full experience you need to pay. And we have the free-to-play games. The free-to-play games, the full experience are free. You can play all the stages of your game for free, but you can pay for items inside the game, cosmetic items, but also performance items. So these microtransactions can be, for example, when in Candy Crush you're buying coins to play more times or to get advantages inside the game. But we can also have microtransactions to buy, for example, in League of Legends, you are buying a skin of your character. So that's the free to play. The game is free for you to play, but you have items and things inside your game that you can pay with real money. And then we have the subscription model. Subscription model is like World of Warcraft, that you need to pay for the game, premium, but also you need to pay recurrently a fee to continuing to play that game. The subscription, the recurring sale, it's a way that you pay recurrently to get the experience. And we have especially multiplayer online games using this model. And finally, but not less important, we have advertising. So these free-to-play games, of course they sell microtransactions, but also they are really, really into advertising. So you advertise products and especially in other games inside your games, and you get money from it. That's the way that you get in-game ads around the game, or also the possibility of advert games. For example, in GameJamPlus, we had this category, Anjos Tintas. The category Anjos Tintas, you create the game colors and paints, but you have the possibility to use this theme to create a game to be used for a company, for marketing purposes. So Anjos Tintas is a company that sells paints to all kind of purposes. So they want a game that talks about paints and colors to help them into their marketing strategy. So you are selling for this company advertising game. So you are putting inside your game the Anjos Tintas brand for them to help their market strategy. So that's another kind of business model, another kind of game. You're gonna not profit from selling your game or whatever, but you're gonna profit from the contract between you and the company that are licensing your game to put their brands inside the game. But mostly, that's the way that you're gonna earn money for your games. Premium, freemium, free to play, subscription, and advertising. So all of your games that you prototype in GameJamPlus need to think some or a combination of these models to become sustainable in the market. So, summarizing a little bit about this stuff. Back then, the model of distribution, and we have a lot of games that are still into this model of distribution, are game as product. So, you produce a game, you develop a game, launch your game, and that's it. You produce, launch, been paid for the downloads of your game, and you go to the next development. But you bought, consume, close experience. But the industry now are most commonly game as service. So you develop your game, you launch your game, but now you have a lot of work to do after that we call live ops. So you start the development, you finish the development, and you launch your game. But you need to continue to analyze the data of your users, giving them support, create events, create additional content, implement these contents, analyze the data, and continuing to produce this cycle, because you need to start to continuing to sell microtransactions, DLCs, subscription. So the game are being purchased or not, but the consumer need to have a continuing involvement experience with your game. So the costs of development doesn't end at the launch of your game. They're continuing, and in fact, in most of free-to-play games, just 20% of the costs of the production are here in the development before the launch of the game. Most of the costs are here in the live ops. You know? So if you are thinking on a mobile game, a free-to-play game, or a game that is pretty scalable, you need to think how to keep your gamers playing your game even after the launch. You need to make their games continuing playing your games, especially because of this. Remember, when you're talking about pay-to-play model, so your premium games, you need to pay for the unit of your games. You doesn't need properly to worry about if the people are continuing playing your game. In fact, if 1 million players buy your game and not even finish the first stage of your game, whatever, you had already been paid, you know? Of course, we have the refund policies and so on, but in the end of the day, if you're selling premium games, here, game as a product, you doesn't worry if they are continuing playing your game, if they are staying in your game. But if you are playing games as a service, if you are selling microtransactions, if you're selling subscriptions, if you are selling advertises inside your game, you need the players to stand in your game. So this funnel is the summarizing the games as a service model. You need to acquire gamers. So you need to make people download your game, because most of those, and you can start to think about the way that you play your game. So if you download the game in mobile phone, how long do you take to stop to play this game? How long do you take to uninstall the game from your phone? So this time is the acquisition of user. You need to acquire the users, because most of them not even gonna continue to play your game. You need to retain these players inside your game. But from those players who continue to play your game, you have a minor percentage that exactly monetize your game. So from these players, this small percentage, in fact, are buying things inside your game, microtransactions, coins, whatever. So you need to think about this funnel to understand the business model of free-to-play games. And let's see a little bit about this acquisition, retention, monetization numbers to understand this model that is pretty more complex than the download and pay for a game. So you need to acquire your users. How to acquire users? You have two ways. You have organic way, so you are advertising for a friend game. The players are started to talk to their friends to download your game and so on. That's the organically growth of your game. But it's really difficult to acquire all your users just from organic growth. We have a lot of luck involved, of course. Your game going viral is really difficult. But also, you need to have a pretty good game for people wanted to recommend the game. So from the games that you are playing, how many of them you advises from friends to download this game? And from these friends that you advised them for download, how many of your friends actually download this game and keeps playing? So there is not a lot of organic growth of marketing. So you need paid acquisition of users. Paid acquisition of users, it's advertising. Advertising in Facebook, Instagram, inside another games. You're gonna advertise your games as much as you can for make people to download your game, to acquire your game. This graphic here from Superdata are telling us how much costs in average around the world. So we have most expensive and less expensive acquisition of users. For example, acquiring a user in Latin America is less expensive than in Europe or North America because of the cost of the advertise itself. But in average, you need to pay in 2020. You needed to pay $1.47 to acquire one user for a game to install your game. If you wanted to register in your game, create an account or something, it's $5.72, and you need to invest at least $43 and $88 in advertising for each player that's gonna make their first in-app purchases. So you need to spend almost $45 to acquire a single user that's gonna pay for anything inside your game. But if you're acquiring the players, so for acquiring the players, that's the distance between the players that you are acquiring and the players that are monetizing. You know, the funnel. Let's see a little bit about this retention thing. we're talking about the day one rotation is the KPI of how many of your players in average stop to play your game at the first day. So I download today, I stop to play today. If your game perform median in the industry, 25% of your players gonna stop to play your game in the first day. If you are in the top 25% performance games, you're gonna top 35% of abandon in the day one. And if you are in the bottom 25% of games in performance, just 15% of your players gonna continue to play your game in day one. To day 7, you can see this average going to 6%. So if today you have 100 new players in your mobile game, in average, just 6 of these players will continue to play your game in the next week. In the day 28 says that from 100 players that download your game today, only 1 to 2% of your players gonna continue to play this game after a month. So that's a lot. So you need to acquire a lot of people, to retain these people, and to monetize these people. This is another KPI. The KPI is average revenue per paying user. So from those who pay for anything in your games, how much they spend in your game? $6. That's the revenue, that the average revenue per paying user. If it's the average revenue per daily active user, so you have 1 million active users, you have 2 cents from each active users that you got. You know? These graphics here is just to illustrate for you that this model, acquisition, retention, monetization, it's not easy, but it's the most profitable into the games industry. You need to expend a lot of money acquiring, retention, and converting this player into monetizations. But if you are seeing the top 10 games in basic monthly active users, if you multiply, for example, the 121 million active users in Honor of the Kings and $2, that says that every day they get 1 to 1 million multiplied by 2 cents in revenue per day. So they're basically printing money. They have a lot of players playing the game, and they're paying for things inside the game. Same in Roblox, Candy Crush, League of Legends, etc., etc., etc. These games have so many active users that the revenue, even with this average, but with this performance of revenue per paying daily active user, they receiving a lot of money for it. So if you wanted to create a free-to-play game, you need to understand that you need to create a game interesting enough to make the people to download the game, good enough to keep the people playing your game, and with enough advantages that makes them to monetize your game. There's a problem in free-to-play games. For example, Flappy Bird. Flappy Bird, it was a really trendy game. Millions and millions of persons download this game, but it doesn't earn a single penny from the game because it's a free game without microtransactions, without advertising. So even with a lot of players, there is any monetization. So you need to understand that you need to acquire, you need to retain, but you need to understand how to monetize your game. If your player doesn't know how to, if it's not a fair bargain, it's not interesting to buy anything inside your game. Even if it's a good game, they're gonna continue to play your game, but they doesn't gonna to buy anything inside your game. You know. So, how? What is the principles for you to increase your free-to-play game revenue? You need to create a fair bargain. So the players need to understand that your game it's fair for them to pay for the products, the microtransactions. So if it's too expensive for buy item inside your game, they just doesn't gonna pay for it. You need to maximize customization. So what makes players wanted to create buy things inside the games are the customization. For example, League of Legends, there are people paying more into clothes for their characters than clothes for by themselves. So they want skins and special skins inside Fortnite, League of Legends, because they want to customize their players. You need to make their players highly satisfied with the game. So if your games are frustrating, especially when you're talking about pay to win, so if you are feeling that you need to spend money to win your game or to get fun with this game, they doesn't gonna like it. They need to keep the satisfaction high to make them think this worth to continue and play the game. You need to create values for the players. You need to create things, events, activities, seasons to make the players engaged. And you need to integrate the real life with the game. So that's the future of our industry. When Facebook, for example, Facebook to Meta, from the metaverse thing, is because games are not anymore just an entertainment platform when the game itself is the center. For example, we have some games like Roblox, even Grand Theft Auto Online, GTA Online, that the most important reasons for the players, Fortnite, whatever, for the players to go to the game is not the game itself, but the socialization that the game provides in terms of connection with another people. So it's not anymore about just to play the game. It's about virtualize the places where the people connect with each other. If you are able to create a game that can make people doing it, you're gonna get a lot of profit. But it's really, really expensive to create a game in these terms. That's why it doesn't have many of them. So, to conclude this overview about the business model of the game industry, I want to tell you a little bit about scope of your game. So you need to understand how many and especially how many budget you commonly expend in each stage of your game. So we started with the high-level concept. Should I follow this idea? So it's the first day of Game Jam, the 2% of your project. It's when you decided if this idea it's good enough and you need to continue to follow it. And then in the second day of the Game Jam, you create the concept around this. You create the first prototype that make you understand if you are going to get on with it, if it's an idea that is good enough for you to invest on. And you started to prototype that. So you are now into this moment. You have your playable prototype, your prototype that you produce it into Game Jam. You conclude this first playable prototype, and it's only the 10% of your project. Right now, you're entering in the next 90% of the project that you need to create a commercially viable game. So you just answer the question, is it worth doing? And what makes you understand this, to listen this question? You have received feedback from the local jury. You receive feedback from your fellow mentors or participants into your local game jams. Right now, you have some validation that your game worth become something in the future that is interesting enough to continue in the next stages of GameJamPlus. But right now, you need to produce your vertical slice. So in the end of this process, in the end of this process until the semifinals and to the finals, you're gonna to produce your vertical slice. You're gonna produce the next 15% of your game. You're gonna understand if your game can see the end, if the game is interesting enough an experience to go to the market, to be finished into the industry. Because with this vertical slice is what you need to convince investors, to convince publishers to pay for the next 75% of the development. The alpha version of the game and the beta version of your game. So you need to produce the vertical slice. That's what will make you to understand the question if this game can see end and possibility in the market. And then with the budget, you're going to produce the alpha version of your game. With alpha version of your game, we're going to have 60 to 70% of our game done. And it's the version of our game that you're going to understand exactly what you need to be done to deliver the game into the market. You need to work a little bit more, 10 to 20% more in your game to understand what you need to optimize in your game. That's the beta version. What you need to optimize in your game to create chances of success. So the last 20% of your project, it's what you have everything done in your game. So you need to understand the percentage of the work done in each one of the stages to understand the effort, the budget, the costs to produce a game. And you need to understand the budget and the cost to produce a game to understand how much you're gonna need to profit with these business models to pay back the cost to be to production of your game. So summarizing this presentation, I wanted to share with you a little bit about this overview about business models, value chain of the industry, who gains what is the stakeholder, the stages of industry, etc., etc. Because we need to understand that your game is just the half of the process for success. Even with a good game, without a good strategy, how to launch this game in the market, you might not profit enough to pay from the cost of this game. So this overview here, this first panel here, is for you to understand that produce the game is important, produce a good game is important, but if you want to create commercially, you need to understand the business around it, because the product itself, we need to embody this business model inside of it. I hope that you like it. I know that I talk a lot of different things inside this presentation. I try to be most superficial and not complex to help you to understand if it's the first time that you listen about business model in the game industry. That's my contact. I think we have 10 minutes for questions only, sorry. But I can see here in the chat auditorium that we doesn't have any questions yet, but you can open your mic and make a question if you want. Anyone? There is anyone here?
Someone's writing. Don't worry. DPC Wiz is writing.
Okay.
Also, where can you find publishers? That's a $1 million question.
$1 million question. Well, mostly in our industry, the way to find publishers, it's into events. So we have a proper event in our industry that it's matching points between publishers and developers. So we have Gamescom, we have GDC, we have Big Festival here in Brazil, we have Games, whatever, a bunch of events out there. That is all about meeting publishers and developers. But most of the publishers out there, they have in their websites some place to submit your game to be analyzed by the publishers. So you need to research about which publisher are you interested in, go to their website and see if they have an email or a form to apply to be evaluated for them. So you have these events and we have the direct contact with the publishers. I had answered your questions. I don't know if you were too,
Yes, it was answered. And Fishbowl Dust asked if I were an indie dev and I already had a good game prototype, instead of looking for a publisher to fund the rest of my development, would you recommend crowdfunding like Kickstarter?
Well, crowdfunding is really, really difficult. The problem about crowdfunding is that you need to understand crowdfunding as a pre-sale. So if you do not have yet a good community for a game, your crowdfunding gonna fail. So it's really difficult for you to sell an idea of a game without a community that already following you or following this idea, and hope that all the cost of the development gonna be covered from this community. So I think crowdfunding is interesting, but we had a lot of failure crowdfunding in the games in the last years. We had a lot of games that received the money from the backers and doesn't manage to deliver what they promised. So the players and the backers from crowdfunding are being more and more suspicious about if you are being able to deliver what you are promising. So if you are thinking on crowdfunding, it's cool. But you need to understand that if you want to finance the full development of your game with crowdfunding, before the crowdfunding launch, you need to have already a really active community that are following your game, are following your development, and want your game to be produced. Because if you launch your crowdfunding before your any community, anything, it's going to be really, really difficult to make enough money from this crowdfunding. Crowdfunding also can work as a pre-sale of your game. So you know that your game is already financed, you have all the money for producer game, but you launch a crowdfunding to create some revenue from it and create some community for it. But you are not depending on the money from the crowdfunding to make your game feasible in the market. So that's what I recommend. So I think it's really, really difficult for a developer that never launched any game without any community to successfully fund a game with a crowd. I had answered your question?
His writing just had to be this eternal silence here. And Kelly is here. Hey Kelly, how are you? Kelly is always with us.
Hi, Kellen.
Fishbowl said, yes, thank you. It just means I'd have to work on a game community as well. So thank you.
Okay.
So
thank you,
we have a question. We have a question from Kelly. And Kelly is always with us on every talk ever. She's amazing. Will there be a monetization course next year like last year? The deepest monetization course?
Yeah, we are planning some workshops around it. For example, we have a partnership with Tilting Point this year. And Tilting Point, for those who want to understand better about monetization for free-to-play games, deeply what I summarize into this presentation, we're probably going to have some workshop around it. And yeah, we're planning to have some more in-depth workshops and lectures around. When we're going to launch or in the onboard of our second stage in 2 weeks from now. So in next week we're gonna deliver who is the companies that and the groups that are gonna participate in the second stage. And 2 weeks by now, on 17th of November, we're gonna have the launch event of the second stage. And in this event, we're going to explain all the activities that we are planning on. But yeah, we are planning activities about monetization.
So it was answered. And Flavio has a question. Would you like to read it? I can read it.
Yes, I can read it. I just sent the chat here. Yep. We have a game that is in the vertical slice version, and we have already agreed with Telco Market Publisher. Okay. And accepted this version to publish. Can some markets like this, telephone telco, be used to test the game and get feedback to improve the game to prepare it for a most robust market? At the same time, that is the vertical slice version of the game already brings some financial return in this stream market for games. Okay, so as understood, we are talking about a telco or telephony that already agreed to distribute the game that is in the vertical slice version. So I think, yeah, depending on the vertical slice, it's already possible for you to soft launch your game into some markets. before you actually launch the final version of game and get some profit for it, some monetization before the full version of the game. And I think these models of soft launching, creating some pre-launching of your game, testing the game with the market, feedbacking, improving, it's really, really smart because you're going to have a lot of knowledge from your players after the launching of your game. So if you have some model that helps you to get some of this knowledge before the full version of your game, it's really, really interesting as a model for you to launch. So yes, I think it's pretty interesting. We have also in publishing into a PC premium games into Steam, we have the early access, for example. The early access is I have a demo, I have a vertical slice. I'm going to share this partial version of my game with my players that's going to pay for this game with a promotion costs or a pre-backer cost or something. And I'm going to have some pre-revenue during the development of my alpha or beta version of my game. So that's another model. So these creative ways to sell your game to create your profits it's pretty interesting for you. And yeah, I think that model that you're it seems really promising.
Okay. Ferguson also asked, do you have any experience or insight with self-publishing services like Xsolar, Noise, or maybe G-Round?
Personally, of course, I doesn't have experience publishing to the service, but I talk a lot with G-Round, Xsolar, Noise. I doesn't know the guys yet, but it's a really, really interesting alternative for you to create new revenue streams for your game. So I don't think that it's yet possible for you to just publish your game self-publishing with Solar and G-Round without go to the self-publishing in Steam or something. But they have a lot of tools and very interesting tools for you to launch your games and to self-publishing your games. So I recommend you. It's not sponsored yet. I hope that Zola and G-Round sponsor us. But I recommend you to take a look into some of the things that they are providing to developers, because I think that's some interesting tools that can grow the revenue, but they are not yet good enough to make you forget about it, Steam, forget about it, Epic Store. I'm gonna sell my game directly for my players. No, I doesn't think that the consumer way to deal with buying the games are mature enough for them to for you to not use the self-publishing in Steam and just self-publishing with your own landing page with Solar, for example. But yeah, I don't think if I answer your question, Fen Rirson, you can make a follow-up question, but yeah, it's more like alternative. Exactly. So as an alternative revenue stream, I think it's really, really interesting. You need to take a look, definitely. Guys, unfortunately, I need to get out because I have another meeting in 80 minutes from now. But I really like to thank you all to being here. I think we're gonna have in the next months of the GameJamPlus process a lot of good experiences. We're gonna have a lot of lectures and mentoring sessions. So I really appreciate your time, and I hope to see you all in the next activities of GameJamPlus. You are all here in our Discord. All of your activities gonna have it take place here in the GameJamPlus Discord. So thank you all. I'm really happy to have you all here. I hope and that this presentation helps you, and see you next time.
Yay, thank you for coming. We had a full house today, so pretty nice to have you here. We hope that all of the talks will be like this. And yeah, Zamon, you're free. Go to your meeting.
Oh, thank you.
I know how it is. How is it?
Yeah, I need to eat something because it's morning here in Brazil and I doesn't take my breakfast yet. So
I just ate a candy not to have hypoglycemia, and that's it. So everyone, we're going to keep emailing you, and then the official communication channel is going to be your Discord channel. And some of you had issues with the link on the email. I'm going to resend it. So if you were here already, receive again the link, please just not consider, because it is a mail list and things like this. And that's it. So thank you for coming. Hope to see you again on the next talks, on the next mentorships. And that's it. Have a nice day. I'm going to be here if you want to ask some questions. And I cannot answer all of them right now, but I'm here.